Go ahead and get started. 4 or 13 at 7 o'clock. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Hope everybody's having a good Tuesday. Believe it or not, if you haven't been paying attention, we are on week, 6? Yeah, we are on week 6. So let me go to Blackboard and just kind of pull up. Nope. Share. Here we go. All right. There we go. All right, so I'm in Blackboard. I hope everybody can see the week 6, September 30th through October 6th. And what you have due coming up this Sunday are your task 4 revisions. You guys have gotten really good here lately with your writing. I'm not seeing a lot of the same mistakes earlier that I saw in the first couple. So I think this process will go a lot faster from here on out. One thing I wanted to remind myself to remind you, by the time you're ready to submit to the Dropbox, make sure you go back over the document and remove any text that's highlighted in red or yellow. So yellow typically signifies the task. Red is where you're supposed to actually write whatever the task specifies for you to do. So make sure that you go in and remove those highlights. I think I may have missed it on a couple of task 2 or task 3 Dropbox submissions this past week, and that's fine. You just want to make sure you go ahead and correct that now, so that when we get to the final task, which is taking tasks 1 through 5 and combining them into one document, that'll be your app. So, and it should just be a simple matter of combine and submit. So you shouldn't have to be doing a lot of editing by the time we get to that final APSO task and that final submission, which is why I held up the first couple so we can kind of go through that process of writing and revising together, and then we should be good to go. All right, Shawana wants to know for task 4, can you explain section 1, the action plan? Hang on one second, Shawana, I will get there. We'll pull that up and look at it again together. So everybody straight on removing the highlighted part of the text? So by the time what you will submit will just be plain black and white text. All right. Somebody have a question? Okay. So let's look at task 4.
Dr. Crawford, before we
yes
get to that, I know we're supposed to remove the yellow text and everything, but the prompts I think are in a different, like they're the size isn't the same. Should we make all that 12 times New Roman also, or leave it as it is?
No, go ahead and make it standard 12 times Roman. All right, tasks. All right, let me make sure that I am sharing the right screen. There we go. All right, so Shawana's question was around task 4. All right, so the biggest part of task 4 is the actual template, and that's where you actually specify, what the task is, who's responsible for what's your matrix of success for that task, and then what is your what is your timeline. So it's basically that first part is just a giant graphic organizer that lays out in detail within the context of your plan, who's doing who's responsible for what is your matrix of success, what's your timeline, and then how are you going to how are you going to progress monitor your tasks over time. Shawana, does that make sense? And I'll pull up the
Yes, that makes sense. I understood like all the other parts, but specifically I was looking at the section that was titled "The Importance of Action Plan" and that it needed to be research based.
Yes.
Okay, in that section, when I look back at the example, it just seemed like I really wasn't sure what needed to go in that section. Are we specifically talking about what an action plan is? Our specific action plan? I saw that the example talked about the different leadership styles, so I didn't feel 100% confident I had the right information in there.
Right. So it's a combination of both. It's, what does the research say an effective action plan is, and then how does your plan fit into that definition? So
Okay.
if you're focusing in on a reading strategy or a reading intervention for, ELL students, you want to document that whatever intervention. So for instance, let's say you're going to train teachers on PSYOP. PSYOP is a proven research-based intervention. PSYOP is good for all learners, but it was initially created to support English language learners years ago. So you would then go into, PSYOP is this, its background is this, here's some of the data around supports, and then here's how we're going to implement it for our action plan for this purposes of this exercise here.
Got it.
Okay?
Okay.
All right. Ashanti, yes, leave the directions as. You don't take anything out. You leave all those directions exactly as is. The only thing you're adding is what you are creating as a part of that document. All right? Okay. So task 4, revisions should be due. Go ahead and submit them to me again first in the discussion board. I'll take a look at it. If there is nothing I want you to change or adjust, then I'll just shoot back, hey, ready for submission to the Dropbox, and boom, you're done, and then you can focus in on task 5. Let me go back here to the directions. All right, so again, do task 4 revisions. Again, I know it says submit to the Dropbox, submit them in the discussion board first. Let me take one last look at it. And once it's ready to go, I'll shoot you a note. Hey, go ahead and submit to the Dropbox. And then that turnaround shouldn't take me but a second. I can get it in, get the grade in, and we can keep it moving. Also, don't forget your peer reviews. The second one, or the 2 peer reviews. Again, you'll submit them now to the discussion board so your peers can look at it, but then don't forget to submit the peer reviews to the Dropbox so that you can go ahead and get the grades and make sure that we're keeping up with your points for this semester. And then also, again, looking ahead, task 5 is due as well. Okay. The other thing I want you to be aware of is, if you haven't been looking, in about 2 weeks, I believe it is, your first case study is due. And so I believe I already have that pulled up. So you've got 2 of these. Can anybody see that? Case study 1?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So again, you'll it's pretty straightforward. you'll get together with your Zoom team, and this is why I suggested last week everybody go ahead and create their account, because you've already done one Zoom session with a discussion board, and you'll have you do a Zoom session with each of the case studies. So again, you'll read the case study, and then you'll center your discussion and your writing around these 4 questions. There are some things that I'll be specifically looking for. I'm not going to tell you what they are yet. I want to see how well you address this individually, and then within the context of your team, you'll have a Zoom session around the question and the case study as well. The other thing with the case study, again, here are the directions for the case study. Again, tells you, read them. It's pretty self-explanatory. I'm not going to read it to you. Focus in on 3 group consensus. It's nice to have it, but it's not required. So I don't want you to sit there and bang your heads if, for whatever reason, 3 people come up with 3 different ways of looking at this case study. The first one's pretty straightforward, so I think you'll get there. But one of the things you're going to find once you make the transition from where you are now to where you're trying to go is that it's very, very difficult to get teachers to have a discussion that doesn't automatically end with consensus. Teachers are driven to consensus, and while you eventually want to get there, sometimes getting people to actually, have the discussion, whether they agree or disagree on something, it can be difficult. And you'll find that when you're looking at whether classroom data, whether it's grade level data, getting teachers to engage in, I'm going to call it intellectual conflict, is difficult. They're simply not built to do it. And sometimes you're going to have to learn how to force them to have those difficult conversations, especially around data that's not where you want it. But again, these are the discussions. Then you got the questions at the end of the case study. Case study number 1 is fairly straightforward. So just keep that in the back of your mind, because that due date is coming up in about 2 weeks. Any questions there? Okay, well, then outstanding. All right, so we've gone through what's due. Remember the yellow, oh, wait a minute. What do we got? How do you report the information if you're new options? Okay, how do you report the information if your administrator is not willing to try any new options, even though you have resource-based information that can help the school for suggested ideas? Yes, Brenda, we can. That's just going to be something we'll have to, that's something that we can work through. So yeah, we can chat later on this week if we need to. Okay, this week, the main topic of your reading was around micropolitics, and it's one of those things where it's easy to skim over. However, when you go to I've got some materials that I posted here for you to go back and look at, and one of the first things I want to show you close. Yes, I know my sharing is paused. You know what? Fine. We'll do it that way. One of the documents, and I got 4 things I posted here for you this week. One of the documents that I posted for you is the North Carolina, can anybody see that? The North Carolina Standards for School Executives?
No, we can't see it. We can see the tabs on your screen. Oh, it just came up.
Yep. Okay, there we go. All right. So the reason that I wanted to just take a second to kind of zero in on micropolitics, even though it may seem like an academic exercise when you are reading it, I wanted to point out to you that addressing micro-political issues is actually one of the 8 standards on which, as a school executive, you are rated. So there is an actual standard for micro-political leadership. We'll build systems and relationships that utilize the staff's diversity, encourage constructive ideological conflict in order to leverage staff expertise, power and influence to realize the school's vision for success. The executive will also creatively employ an awareness of staff members' professional needs, issues, and interests to build social cohesion and to facilitate distributed governance and shared decision making. So while it's easy to kind of look at this and say, dear Lord, it's the middle of October, it's just the beginning of October, or I'm trying to get through the first quarter, I do not have time to read about this nebulous topic on micropolitics. You need to know right up front that that's one of the 8 standards that we are actually rated on, and how well you demonstrate, or how well you can demonstrate, or, and I'll pull up something here in a second, how well your staff conveys to how you handle that. And does anybody care to guess how your staff will convey what they think of your micropolitical leadership or lack thereof? I'll give you a hint. You're going to find out about it in about 4 months.
Amongst each other, bringing down the morale.
Huh?
Amongst each other, bringing down the morale.
No, something that's it's gonna get a lot of play here shortly. And you all know what it is.
Survey?
There you go. The good old-fashioned North Carolina Teacher Working Conditions Survey. And I didn't need to do this, but because you can get this one by yourself, but I actually posted the link to that survey as well. Let me share my screen again. All right, can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm sure everybody here has at some point looked at this, whether you looked at your district results or looked at your school results. And in case no one has ever told you, there are several parts, and that's that particular section of the principal's evaluation instrument, where all the assistant superintendent or school resource officer or whatever it's called in whatever part of the state you are located, they will simply go right to, come on. They will simply go right to your schools. And I'm not going to pick one. I'm just going to pick the state data. They will simply go right to different elements of the teacher work condition survey, and they will copy and paste whatever the percentage is here. And so, there are some things that are within your control. There are some things that are not. So if you look at Q2.1 here, class sizes are reasonable such that teachers have the time available to meet all of your students. Well, clearly, this is the state average. Clearly, teachers across the state aren't happy about class size. Nothing you can do about that, but, that's what you get saddled with as an administrator. And so when we're talking about micro-political leadership, as it is listed on the principal's instrument, the evaluation instrument, Q7, here we go. So you look at, Q7 and then A through K. Questions like, there's an atmosphere of trust and mutual respect. Teachers feel comfortable raising issues or concerns. The school leadership consistently supports teachers. So again, the superintendent or whoever's doing the principal's evaluation, or in your case, as assistant principals, your principal may, make you, in charge of a grade level or a grade, tier team, and may tie the AP's evaluation to this as well. You would simply copy and paste the data here from the TWC, and they'll put it right in your evaluation. So when we're talking about micropolitics, folks, and why it's important because, one, you're going to be evaluated on it. And then two, this is one of the main data sources for that one. There was one I wanted to show you specifically because, let me see, practices. Because there's a direct correlation with the question and something else. Leadership. Here we go. Okay. Can anybody see here question 5.1e? School administrators support teachers' efforts to maintain discipline in the classroom. Would anybody care to guess what the correlation is between how a school does with this particular question here and another data point in your school?
The suspension reports.
Who said that?
Shawana.
Shawana, you are 2 for 2. That is absolutely correct. We actually looked at this a couple of years ago in Guilford County. Hands down across the district, as suspensions in a school or school district go down, the percentage here also goes down. When suspensions are up, then this question, so I call 5.1e the suspension question, which when we're talking about micropolitics and micropolitical issues, again, each school is different, each school system is different, and each conversation that you would have to have around a school is different. But if you're walking into a situation where you've got a 600 student school, of which maybe 100 are students of color, and 85% of your suspensions come from or written on students of color, you have an issue there. You got 85% of your students that are less than 20% of your population that are, getting 80% of the suspensions. That's an issue. Now, how you address that is one of the things you're going to be rated on, and it will show up whether or not your staff, as it is currently configured, it'll show up right here in this data. So understanding those relationships well is equally as important. Does everybody understand that and how you need to look at this? And it'll be really interesting to see. And I forgot what they are. There are like 6 of these, and I'll find them and I'll post them here in week 6. But there are 6 of these questions on the TWC that consistently, depending on how they're rated by staff, they're a pretty good indicator of how the school is performing in many cases. And I'll get those 6 so you can kind of key in on those as you look at your school's data in the next few months. Any questions there? Has anybody ever seen this particular one for your school and know whether or not it does or does not correlate with suspension data?
I haven't seen it in comparison to the data yet, but I have seen these questions. We take the working condition every year, even though the state doesn't require it every year.
Right. And has that particular data point gone up or down, or do you know?
I'm not sure, but I can ask.
If that was mean, I would just pull it up right here on the screen, but I'm not going to do that. But no, I mean, you can look it up for yourself. You don't have to ask. You can just kind of look it up for yourself. They usually keep 3 surveys worth of data up on the screen, so you can go back 6 years, I think, and be able to kind of look at the trend. I find it interesting, and this is the state data. I find it interesting that only 65% of teachers across the state indicate that students follow rules of conduct, and that's actually gone backwards from 2014. So it looks like we've got a state perception issue on discipline. Be thinking about how you would have that conversation. School administrators consistently enforce rules for conduct, and yet barely 3/4 of people say teachers consistently enforce rules for student conduct. So, how does that work? So when we're talking about micropolitics, these are just some of the things that you need to look at. Like I said, when you go back to the principles evaluation instrument, that is its own separate standard. So folks, you got to know how you're going to deal with people, and different schools have different issues, and part of what you have to do is learn how to navigate what those issues are and how you're going to address them. Any questions there with that one?
I have the chart up for my school.
She's gonna see. Go ahead.
48% agree, 19% strongly agree. So it looks like
67.
33% weren't happy.
Okay, so 67 will put that particular question in your school right in the yellow, and so that will be something that the principal would want to address. Do you have systems in place? Are all teachers following those systems? Do they know what those systems are? Do kids know what the situation is? Do parents know? So it's a multitude of questions with lots of points that intersect and touch each other, and part of your job is to kind of navigate all that toward continuous improvement. So that's a good it's good looking out.
When I'm reading this data,
Yeah.
I know you said this multiple years. I'm assuming that it has all the colors on it. I'm looking at that version of it. It has purple, red, green, and blue on the graphs. I'm to assume that the last bar colors would be the most recent year.
I'm looking at the summary, but typically the most recent, if you're looking at it, is going to be on the far left. So if you look at my screen with the summary,
okay, you're looking at a different version of the report.
yeah, I'm looking
okay.
at the state summary. So like this 60.2 here would be 2014. This is 2016. This is 2018.
Hang on, I can change the view.
Yeah.
Let's try to get your version. Okay, I got it now.
Okay. So your teacher work condition survey, and even folks, when you're interviewing for positions, oftentimes the district will give you a copy of a school's most recent teachers working condition surveys, and they will ask you to analyze the data. So, for instance, they may, and they may give you a summary. They may give you parts of it. They may give you the whole thing, but they'll ask you, here's the school's most latest teacher work condition survey, and they'll just ask you, please respond to what it tells you, and what you've got to go through, and you've got to look at all of this, and you've got to look at what it tells you. So again, this is state data, so it's larger. But let's say, for instance, managing student conduct here. This is 77. But let's say you're interviewing for a school, and you look at this one, and it's like 41. That would be something that hopefully would jump out at you, and then you would, in your narrative or however they ask you to address it, say, hey, as I was looking at the data, start with things that are going well. I noticed that 86% of teachers think that leadership is going well. That's pretty standard across the last three. And, identify those things that are going well, but then you jump right into, so some things that would concern me, that would be right on my initial radar is, managing student conduct is exceptionally low. It's below both the state average, it's below both the district average. And so I would want to try to figure out what's going on with this. I need to look at, suspension data when I get that, flesh that out by, ethnicity, flesh it out by sex, so I can kind of gather what's going on with suspensions and what's driving them. So this is also part of the interview process in many cases.
Dr. Crawford, I finally got the right chart up.
Nice.
And what I can see in our data, we're actually 96%
Good.
for 2018.
Uh-huh.
And 2014, it was really, really low.
Okay.
Sorry, I scrolled. 42.2%.
Ooh.
Then the next time we took it was 86.7, then 96.1. I'd like to tell everybody right after that 42.2%, there was an administration change of the principal.
Okay, well then, there you go.
Mhm.
So there is a lot there that you could, flesh out. What did the principal do? What did they address? Did they bring in a new program? Did they just kind of reinstitute or have everybody follow rules that were already existing there? I mean, there's a lot there that you can unpack on how a school just about doubled, its score in that particular area in 1 year. And yes, sometimes it could be, we just changed the principal. He just moved this one thing. All of a sudden, everything fell into place. So that's a really good data point.
Well, I think the report is every 2 years.
Yes.
It's 14, 16, 18. Yeah, 20. We'll take it again this year.
Yep.
Yes, I know they changed the administration. I mean, one area, managing student contact, students at the school follow rules. In that 14 year, 10.6%
10.
of teachers. 10.6, yes, sir.
Wow.
I know they were having a lot of behavior issues in there, and they came in, reset the rules, almost an entire new administration.
Mhm.
Suspension definitely went up, and things got back in order.
And let me be clear, guys, I'm a firm believer that, and this is going to sound so not PC, the inmates need to know who have the keys. And so it's always been, and I've done all three levels now, elementary, middle, and high school, particularly at the secondary level. I always let it be known, with my staffs, we have to be clear about who's running things. That can't be ambiguous. Now, that said, there are also some things that adults need to make sure that they're doing to make life easier. And so, 10.6, that would be a lot there to unpack, but that's really interesting data. So all of you, when you get a chance, make sure that you're looking at your teacher work condition survey, because when you move into the administrative realm, a little bit as an AP, but definitely as a principal, you need to recognize that your part of your evaluation, in addition to your school's EVA scores and proficiency scores, part of your evaluation is directly going to be copy and paste right from this document. Okay, so if you're not familiar with it and all its tenets, you need to get so. And like I said, I will find those, I think it's like 6 or 7 that in the aggregate, if you pull them together, supposed to give you a decent idea of how a school is performing. All right. The other thing around micro political leadership. So showing you the standards that you want to look at, and you look at 21st century leadership. Let me pull this up. All right, just some things here. And I'm not going to go through all of it. But again, part of my issue is I don't know that we've really defined yet what 21st century leadership skills are. And believe it or not, we're about to be 20 years in to the 21st century. But some things that you want to look at as you begin to make this transition will be things like school branding. School branding is a big one. How do you get your schools out there? Social media campaigns. Guys, social media is going to be the death of all of us at some point, but schools can't get away from it.
It is slowly killing me. It's the reason I have a headache right now.
What's sad is I've been doing this long enough to remember the heady days of MySpace and oh man, the drama that came off of MySpace, dear Lord. But
I feel like it's getting blurry. What's school issues versus community issues versus home issues? But then because it causes a disruption in the learning environment, then it's a school issue.
Well, here's the thing. So even things like cyberbullying. It used to be when this first started, especially in the MySpace days. I would quickly tell parents, look, this happened with your kid in your living room on your computer. This is your issue. I'm only dealing with whatever nonsense they bring here in school. If you did not know, guys, that has changed in North Carolina. So that even if it's a situation of cyberbullying, schools are now expected in North Carolina to take a much more proactive approach in addressing those issues. And so whoever said it's giving them a headache, believe me, I hear you. I had 2 fifth grade boys get into it in the cafeteria toward the end of last year. Now, yes, I admit it was May, so at that point we were all tired and miserable. But these 2 got into it over Fortnite. I got so sick about hearing that daggone game. But they were arguing over Fortnite. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up. But part of the things you'll deal with 21st century issues are school branding, social media, digital citizenship. And I don't know that we do a good enough job with our kids of really engaging them with what that is, especially when you look at the epidemic of sexting in our schools. And 14, 15-year-old, boys walking around with half-naked, pictures of, 13, 14, 15-year-old girls, not recognizing that they can be walking around with a phone that can get them convicted of child porn. This is 21st century education.
I think the state is rolling something out in October to the middle school kids, that digital component, and it's coming through the health classrooms.
Okay.
I just went to a PD. I can't think of the name of it right now, but every month there's a different section of that digital responsibility. And it's like the sex education class. The parents can opt out, but by opting out, it says, I will teach my kid at home to be responsible.
Hmm.
And each section, each month, a different topic is covered. And I think it does like plagiarism and sexism and child pornography and all that kind of stuff.
And I think it's great that the state is doing that. The problem is, what year are we in?
Actually, it's not just a middle school, it is K-12,
Okay.
because everybody's getting all the same thing, but it changes based on how much you get, what grade level you're in.
Right. So again, I'm glad the state is doing, and thank you, Shauna, for that. I'm glad the state is doing it. They're only 20 years late because MySpace was in the mid 90s.
Yes.
So thank you for finally catching up and doing what kids are already doing. But these are the type of things that will begin to consume you in this role. And part of what you have to do is lead this in whatever capacity. And folks recognize that what this will look like for you will change depending upon where you are in the state. Life is very, very different, in eastern parts of the state that are a lot more rural, much more the buckle of the Bible Belt than they would be in, say, Wake or even CMS, where things may be a little more rural. You may be in a school, down east someplace that may say, I don't want my kids to get that mess. They go to Sunday school on Sunday. They go to Bible study on Wednesday, and they got choir practice on Saturday. I don't want you teaching my kid about this. And that may be a very real sentiment in certain parts of the state. So how do you get your school out there? Social media is the thing. I'm on year 2 of my school's Twitter account, and I'm still learning how to use it, but it's working. I actually tried to do a book study last year on Twitter. I wanted to call it a Twitter talk. Didn't quite work out the way I want to, so I'm trying to revamp it. I'm gonna come back at it again. So we avoid the, stay after school and let's go over this chapter or these pages. I wanted to do it on Twitter. Like I said, didn't work out quite as well as I wanted to, but we're gonna circle back around and try it again. Blogs, social medias, and for those of you that are older like me, how do you lead a school full of millennials? I have a teacher, God help me, she is younger than Lion King. I just didn't need to hear that this morning, but yeah, she's younger than the Lion King. And then, of course, what does the workplace require? Does our school's curriculum match up with that? So these are just various issues that you want to look at as a 21st century educator. Like I said, I don't know that the state or local districts have really done a good enough job in explaining what it is, but you're going to have to learn how to navigate through all this. And, you just need to be nimble and be able to, figure out where you are, what direction you're going, and then lead your school through that particular exercise. So I've got this PowerPoint posted as well under week 6. So let me get back here.
Dr. Crawford, did you
Yes, ma'am.
say for task 5, you didn't want to give us too much guidance yet? You wanted to see what we came up with?
No, for
Case study.
for the case study. I want you all to kind of go through it and tell me what you think.
Okay, can we look at task 5 before we log off?
Yes. Let me close
I
out
know the draft is due Sunday, and it's a little different than what we've been doing. It's a summary, a reflection piece.
Wait a minute. Let me get there. Cancel. Okay. And let's go to week 6. No. We'll go to Absol. All right, task 5. All right. So aligning the course content. So let me go back and pass the competencies. All right. So basically, you're writing a reflection on everything that you've done so far, and then you'll start to gather some of these different evidences. Because what's going to happen is, in addition to this, what you're going to submit to the Absol Dropbox is a combination of everything, task 1 through 5.
Okay.
So, you're looking at, aligning the course content. You're going to combine what you have read. Basically, what you want to do is you want to combine theory and practice, or in this case, practicum. Sorry about that. Here we go. What you want to do is you want to combine the theory, the things that you've read, and what you have actually been able to put together. And your basically is going to kind of reflect on everything you've done thus far, and then it gives you a list of different competencies that you'll be submitting as evidence of those types of everything that you've done thus far, whether it's a picture of you leading a PLC, whether it's because when this is all said and done, you're going to be presenting this to your school's administrative team anyway. So,
Okay.
and then I think the sample has a good breakdown of what that looks like. And I think if you just follow that, you'll be just fine. If you get hung up, give me a call, let me know, and I'll try to walk you through it. But don't overthink it.
Okay, and we can get all our standards out of our syllabus, our
Yes.
handbook.
Yes, absolutely. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? All right, everybody straight on what's due. Again, task 4, one more time to the discussion board. I will look at it. If it's good to go, I'll tell you to just go ahead and submit it to the Dropbox. We're coming up on just about the end of the completion of the Absol, believe it or not. And then start working on task 5, and then start looking ahead to your oh yes, Amy, by all means, if you haven't submitted, I believe I've looked at everybody's task 3, and task 3 should be good to go. So go ahead and submit that as well to the Dropbox at this point. Just the one reminder again, everybody, go back in, remove the yellow and the red highlights, so that all you're submitting is standard size 12 times size 12 times Roman black and white black font on white paper. And then don't forget to look ahead to the first case study, because part of that's going to be, or that's going to be recorded as well, so you can get your Zoom time together, and we'll be good to go. Anybody have any questions or anything for the good of the order? All right. If there is nothing else, I believe we have a believe there's a session on Thursday. I'll probably pop into that one. If not, my men and my women, thank you. Have a great rest of the week, and I will look forward to talking with you all again next Tuesday. And again, as always, if you have any questions, shoot me an email, or better yet, shoot me a text so that I know to circle back and check my email. All right?
Thank you. Good night.
Guys, have a good night.